Security throws elderly man off plane, then he makes one call and pulls $4 billion from the airline. Nobody noticed the elderly man when he first shuffled into gate 24B at Chicago O'Hare, just another quiet figure among the weary crowd of travelers. He wore a faded navy cardigan, pressed khakis, and orthopedic shoes. His hands trembled slightly as he gripped the handle of a battered brown leather briefcase. His name was Arthur Langston, age 82, widower, veteran, and, though few knew it, one of the last living architects of modern commercial aviation. Arthur's ticket was for Seat 4A on Pacific Skies Flight 726, headed for Los Angeles. It was an ordinary Monday morning, the kind where nobody expects history to shift. But the shift began not with a grand announcement, but with a whisper. "Sir," a voice said above him, firm and devoid of warmth. "You'll need to come with us." Arthur looked up to see two airline security officers standing over him, arms crossed, eyes blank. "There must be a mistake," he said gently. "I've got a ticket." "We're overbooked," the taller one interrupted. "You've been randomly selected to give up your seat." Arthur blinked. "I have a doctor's appointment in LA, a consultation for my heart." "Not our problem, sir. You can take a later flight." "But I already boarded." "Please stand. Now." The murmurs began as Arthur was escorted off the plane, his briefcase swinging against his side. A few passengers averted their eyes. A few looked away in shame. But no one spoke. As the doors closed behind him, Arthur sat again in the terminal. He said nothing. He didn't plead. He didn't protest. He just opened his briefcase, revealing a black rotary-style cell phone, the kind reserved for the obscenely powerful and frighteningly connected. With deliberate fingers, he dialed. "Langston," he said simply when the voice on the other end answered. "Activate the pullback." A pause. "Yes, the full amount." A longer pause. $4 billion. Then he hung up. What no one at the gate knew was that Arthur Langston wasn't just a passenger. He was the founding mind behind Airline International, a company that had quietly invested in and funded nearly every major airline in North America over the past 40 years. Arthur had been called the ghost in the sky by Forbes once, an invisible force shaping the air travel industry. He had given generously to aviation, helped struggling airlines recover, and ensured employee pensions were protected. But this? This was personal. The call Arthur made set off a chain of events that rippled through the financial world like an earthquake. By noon, Pacific Skies stocks had plummeted 36%. By 3 p.m., the airline's CEO had resigned. By sunset, every major news outlet was buzzing with headlines: "Elderly man booted from plane, costs airline billions." But Arthur didn't watch the news. He was on a private jet by then, loaned to him by a rival airline who had seen the opportunity for a graceful gesture. And he was sipping a cup of lukewarm coffee while reviewing an old flight plan he'd once designed during the Cold War. The next morning, Arthur received a call from a trembling Pacific Skies executive. They offered a groveling apology and a lifetime first-class membership. They said they'd donate to a heart foundation in his name. Arthur paused before replying. "I don't want your apology," he said softly. "I want you to understand why this matters." He told them about the young soldier who'd helped him board a plane back in 1953 when he was just a wounded lieutenant. The flight attendant who slipped him a note that said, "Thank you for your service," when he was flying home after burying his wife. The stranger who gave up a seat so he could sit near the restroom when his arthritis flared up. "You see," he continued, "flying used to be about people. About service, dignity, kindness. What you did to me wasn't a mistake in protocol, it was a failure of humanity." There was silence on the line. The CEO stammered something about reviewing policies. Arthur chuckled softly. "You don't need new policies. You need new priorities." The next day, a ripple of change began across the industry. Airlines introduced Humanity First training. A new clause was added to overbooking procedures: no forced removals of elderly or medically vulnerable passengers. Arthur's name quietly appeared on a new foundation, the Langston Passenger Dignity Fund, seeded with $250 million from a collective of humbled airlines. Still, Arthur didn't care for the fame. He didn't give interviews. When a journalist finally found him months later, sitting at a cafe overlooking a small airstrip in Santa Monica, she asked him what he thought about the billions he'd cost the airline. Arthur only smiled. "I didn't take anything," he said. "I just reminded them what matters." The reporter asked what he would say to the officers who had removed him. Arthur looked out toward the runway, where a young boy was watching planes take off with wide, gleaming eyes. "I'd tell them it's never too late to remember someone's story. Or to be kind." He stood, brushing crumbs from his sweater, and nodded to the reporter. "You know, my late wife used to say, how we treat the quietest among us reveals the loudest truths about who we are. That day at the airport, I was quiet. But now they're listening." And with that, he walked off toward the airstrip, where a pilot waited with a smile and a salute. Arthur Langston flew again that day, not as a passenger, but as a symbol of something larger. Dignity. Compassion. The power of one quiet voice, finally heard. Let me know if you'd like a version formatted for audio narration or a printed handout.